Hey everybody, it's Drew with Universal Audio, and in this video, I want to introduce you to the SSL 4000 G Bus Compressor plugin, which is now available natively and has been added to Spark. This new native plugin has external sidechain capabilities for advanced Dynamics workflows that I'll show you in this video. If you want to grab a free demo to follow along, check the link in the description to get your trial started. This plugin expertly models all the nuances that the hardware would impart onto engineers' mixes over many decades. This compressor is an integral part of what makes hits hits. This compressor was built into the center section of consoles that I learned on, so having it on my master fader now continues to be a critical part of my mixing workflow. Let's check out some features and controls first, then we'll get into some sound examples afterwards. At the top of the plugin, we have the all-important gain reduction meter. If you're used to a traditional VU meter, this will look a little strange at first, since its left-to-right travel is not level, but rather the number of decibels of compression. So 4 is really -4, and 8 is really -8. Below that, we have an internal bypass button and 5 knobs. Threshold is the level setting at which compression will kick in. This defaults to +15, so we'll need to bring it down for sure to get some action. Next is makeup gain. Its job is to make up for the level lost when gain reduction is applied. This is critical to accurately hearing what the compressor is doing and for proper gain staging. Below these are attack and release. These controls determine the behavior of the compressor as the signal rises and falls, and applies to signals as they cross the threshold, as well as when they're above it. To set ourselves up for the first example, let's set attack to 30 milliseconds and release to 0.1. Makeup gain is good to go as is, so is ratio. Ratio, by the way, determines the intensity of the compression, with lower ratios resulting in less compression and higher ratios with more. In the lower section, we have our sidechain filter, which allows us to tune the internal sidechain of the compressor to behave as we want. More on this in example number 1. For now, let's set it to around 80 Hz and save all of this as a preset. Next, we have our mix knob for super easy parallel compression workflows. More on this later as well. Also here is the headroom screw. This is a reciprocal gain control that raises or lowers the amount of level going into the compressor while compensating for output. This lets you drive the compressor harder or softer without having to redo all the other controls. Super cool. Finally, we have the classic SSL auto fade controls. This is the ultimate way to get that perfect fade out or in for your epic masterpiece. Set the time and hit the button. Okay, so now that we've had a quick tour, let's get into some examples. And of course, the first one I'm going to show you is a mix bus example. This compressor earned its reputation as the go-to bus compressor for good reason. It simply makes every mix sound better, period. Whether you mix into it or add it halfway through, which is my personal preference, you're going to love what it does to your productions. Let's start with the preset we saved earlier. 30 milliseconds attack, fast release, and 2-to-1 ratio. This is my go-to mix bus starting point for maximum smack. Occasionally, I'll switch to 10 milliseconds on the attack and grab more. And often when I do this, I'll adjust the mix knob back a bit to make sure some of the natural transients can still come through. Super easy parallel compression. Let's listen. Notice how when the compressor was turned off, the mix just sort of fell apart. Elements became unglued and we lost the punch that we had. Also, there was a tonal change compression is not just about dynamics. It alters harmonic relationships, and that impacts frequency content. This is a good thing because not only are we influencing dynamics, but we're making it sound better. There's also one more thing to talk about here. You'll remember that I have the sidechain filter knob set to around 80 Hertz. This control removes some of the low end from the non-audible detection circuit, which makes the compressor less sensitive to the big bottom end that you tend to have in a mix. This reduces the chances of nasty pumping. Notice how I can turn this all the way up or down, and there's no change to the audible frequencies, but the amount of compression happening is impacted. Next, let's look at an external sidechain mix bus example, using the drums to trigger compression on the rest of the instruments in the mix. So we have the same mix bus setup, but let's try changing it up using external sidechain compression from the kick and snare to the rest of the music. This time, enable will be the sidechain in, and the compressor will be reacting only to the kick and snare. When we disable it, the compressor will be reacting to the entire mix. So you'll see compression happening the entire time. For my next example, let's check out the G Bus on a drum subgroup. Now, I like to compress my individual drums when I mix, of course, and if you want to see an example of that, you can see my SSL E-channel strip video here on the channel. But I also like to add them to a subgroup and compress there. That compressor is, of course, reacting to the entirety of the drum kit, which is very different than doing it to individual tracks. So let's check it out. I'm going to load my default drum bus preset. Let's listen. Here again, we have that classic SSL glue and punch that takes my already good drums to the next level. Or as an alternative, let's load a preset I built earlier that uses the mix knob for easy parallel compression. This method lets us use much more aggressive settings and higher amounts of gain reduction, but with the mix knob, we can dial in some uncompressed signal to keep it sounding more natural. So I hope I've helped get you more familiar with the SSL 4000 G Bus Compressor plugin and given you some ideas on how to use it on your mixes, subgroups, and individual tracks. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified of all new UA content. I'll see you next time.